Hey guys, Damon here. So I'm just going to go through how I'm remembering the acidosis and alkalosis. So write your pH, CO2, and HCO3. Okay. Now you've got to remember these numbers. Okay. So pH, your range is 7.35 to 7.45. Okay. So CO2, you're going to drop the sevens, so it's 35 to 45. HCO3, you know it's got to be 22 to 26. Okay, that's our ranges. Next, we're going to add in some arrows. Okay, so arrow 1, I'm just going to put up. Arrow 2 is the opposite, down. Arrow 3 is up. Okay, so we're just going to do the opposite. So down, opposite up, opposite down. Okay, so if you remember from chemistry, if your pH is low, so if your pH is 0, that means that it's an acid. Okay, and if your pH is 14, you know that it's a base or alkaline. Okay, so over here, if your pH is high, you know that it's above 7, and you know that it's alkaline. So we're going to put alkaline or alkalosis. Okay, and if your pH is low, then you know that it's an acid or acidosis. Okay. Now then, what controls your CO2? You got two options, respiratory or the metabolic system. So you know that CO2 is a gas, so we can control the CO2 with the respiratory system. Okay, so that means that HCO3 has to be the metabolic system. Okay, now this is a lot of information, but it's going to be a lot easier once we go through some numbers here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off with an easy one. Okay, so let's say that you've got a 7.3 pH. Okay, you've got a you've got a 49 on the CO2, and you've got a 23 on the HCO3. Okay, and you'll get this through your ABGs. Okay, so 7.3 is outside of our range. Okay, and it's low, so put down a downward arrow. Okay, 49 is outside of our range, but it's above our range, so you're going to put an up arrow. Okay, 23, well, that's in the middle of that, so we're okay. So we're just going to put a dash here, or it's going to be normal. Okay, so all you do, down arrow, come up here, find the down arrow, up arrow, find the up arrow, and if it's normal, just kind of put a line here. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, and 0. Okay, so 2 to 0, you know this is going to be acidosis. Okay, now the next question is it respiratory or is it metabolic? Okay, we know that it's a respiratory because these two match up together. Okay, so that's an easy way to figure out respiratory, metabolic, acidosis, or alkalosis. Okay, now the other question is it compensated? Or is it uncompensated? Okay, now if you've got 2 on one and 0 on another, that means that your body is really not trying to help it out. So that means that we are uncompensated respiratory acidosis. Okay, so let's change these numbers up just a little bit. Okay. So let's say that your CO2 is 29. Okay, so 29 means that this arrow is high. Okay, so follow this arrow up. That means high. Okay, so you're going to draw your line here. So you've got two up arrows. You got two circles up here. So it's 2 to 1. Okay, and again, these two match. So that means that we're in, over here determines acidosis. So we know that we are acidosis. We know we're still in respiratory acidosis, but now we've got one here in the metabolic column. Okay, so if these two are opposite each other, which they should be anyway, they shouldn't be on the same line, that means that we are some kind of compensated. Okay, now the reason I say some kind is you've either got partial or you've got full. Okay, and this versus this, all the sides is right here. Okay, so if this number is outside of this range, that means that we are partially compensated. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that your body is trying to compensate for your acidosis, but it's not getting all the way there. Okay, so the answer to this, pH is 7.3, CO2 of 49, and HCO3 of 29, is respiratory acidosis partially compensated. Okay, and let's go through that again. And I'm going to add a link down below on the quiz. But I checked all of these through, and it's a really good quiz to just kind of practice for your next exam. Okay, so if you're on the page on the quiz, we're going to go through question number 1. Okay, and it's got a big long story, and you don't read the story. But the pH is 7.3. Okay, your CO2 is 68, and your bicarb is 28. Okay, so 7.3 is low, out of our range. 68 is above our range, so we're going to put an up arrow. And this right here, 28, is above our arrow. So just follow it up, down arrow, up arrow, up arrow, up arrow, up arrow. Okay, so we know we're in acidosis. Now which one, respiratory or metabolic, follows the line? So these two match up, so that means that it's respiratory. Okay, and we know that it's compensated because we've got a 2 up here and 1 up here. Okay, so that means that we are compensated. Okay, now we've got partial versus full. Okay, since this is out of this range, we're partially compensated respiratory acidosis. Okay, and if you click that option, you're going to get the correct answer. Okay, now let's go to question number 2. Okay, so pH of 7.0. We've got a PaCO2 of 23, and we've got a bicarb of 12. Okay, so we don't worry about any of those other numbers right now. Okay, that's past the scope of this video. So 7.0 is outside of our range. So, and it's low. So I'm going to put a down arrow here. 23 is outside of our range, and it's going to be low here. And then 12 right here. So we've got low here. So now we've got all down arrows. And I know you're thinking, oh gosh, I haven't seen all down arrows yet. But it's the same process. Okay, so you got a down arrow, followed up, down arrow, down arrow, down. Okay, so we've still got 2 to 1 here. Okay, right here, we know that we're in acidosis because our pH is low. So go ahead and write acidosis. Okay, now what lines up with this? So if you draw a line all the way over, there we are. We're in metabolic acidosis. Okay, now we've got compensated or uncompensated. Okay, so since you've got 2 up here and 1 down here, we know that we're compensated, but are we partially? Are we fully? Okay, since this number is outside of this range here, we know that we are partially compensated metabolic acidosis. Okay, so metabolic acidosis, partially compensated. And question number 2 is correct. Okay, so let's get rid of this. We'll do some more practice. All right, question number 3, pH of 7.6, PaCO2 of 31, and HCO3 of 25. Okay, so our pH is 7.6, so it's higher than our ratio, or higher than our interval there. It's out of the range. So 31, this is below our range, so we're going to put a down arrow. Now this is right in the middle of our range. So if it's in the middle, just put a line. You can put normal, or whatever you want. Okay, now just follow the arrows. Up arrow, down arrow, normal. So I just draw a line here for normal. So we've got 2 to 0. So our pH is up, so you know it's alkalosis. Go ahead and write alkalosis. Okay, now these two match, so you know it's respiratory. Okay, now then we've got a 2 and a 0. Okay, so what does that mean? Compensated or uncompensated? Okay, so since there's a 0 here, we know that we are uncompensated. Our body's really not trying to help us out any. So we are uncompensated respiratory alkalosis. Okay, and there you go. All right, so I skipped ahead. I'm on question number 6. I don't know if they keep the same numbers on each question or not, but I'm on question 6, and it says the pH is 7.39. Okay, the CO2 is 27, and the bicarb is 19. Okay, now we haven't seen this one yet. So you've got a pH is 7.39, so this is normal. Okay, now you've got a 27, which is low, and then you got a 19, which is low. So follow the arrows up. Well, this is normal, so we're just going to leave that alone for a minute. So 27, so this is down, and this is down. So now we've got 1 and 1. We don't know if it's a respiratory, metabolic, acidosis, alkalosis. We don't know. So here comes the tricky part. Our normal pH is 7.4, but we like to have a little range. Okay, so if this is inside, if our pH is inside this range here, that means that we are compensated. Okay, our body's doing a really good job at trying to keep us inside that range. So we're going to go ahead and write compensated. Okay, compensated what? We do not know. Okay, but 7.4 is our normal. We're a little lower than 7.4, so we're going to put an arrow down. Okay, so if we go up here, arrows down. So just like normal, We're going to go across. Okay. We know that we're in acidosis just by a hair, but we're still in acidosis. Okay. So which one lines up? So we're metabolic acidosis. And we know that we're compensated because our pH is inside of this range. Okay, so this is metabolic acidosis compensated. So, and it'll say something like fully. I forgot to put that. Fully or partially. So if we're compensated, if we're inside of this range, we know that we're fully compensated. Okay, and that's what this quiz right here likes to see, is fully compensated. Check the answer, and we are correct. Well, I hope this helps you guys out. If you guys have any questions about this, please let me know. And until next time, have a good day.